name's Greg, and welcome to my Wargaming world.
We're about to undertake the patrol phase. I thought I'd just take you around the table, which is for the new World War I variant of Chain of Command. And this is the retreat from Mons. It's the battle of the 24th of August, and the Germans, we have our patrol markers here, are looking to punch through a defensive line from the British. The aim of the game is that 2 units will leave the board at the British end, and the British are looking to defend this side. So just thought we'd have a quick look around the table, and the British will start with their patrol markers. The mounted infantry here just coming across the farm. Just have a quick closer inspection of the cavalry. We've got actually it's 3 patrol markers. It's the 3 at the front, and I thought I'd add the officer at the back there just for company. And they'll be looking for a defensive line along this front, possibly taking the road to their advantage. And then if we move all the way down the other end of the board, you can see the river with the watermill. We've got this area of trees, and then next to the windmill we have the excellently painted lancers. And I add the fact that it's excellently painted because it wasn't me who did them. I've had them for a long period of time, and they are absolutely my pride and joy. So for that I'll stop here. We'll do the patrol phase and then show you which figures are going to be fighting it out. I've already rolled for force morale. The British got 6, so therefore they'll have 11 for force morale, the Germans 3, and therefore they will start on 9. So as a result, the patrol phase, the British will go first. I've completed the patrol phase, and we've got the British one here, a little further on there, and then one just by the church, just so you can ignore the officer there. And then for the Germans we've got one here, one here, one just in front of the farm building, and then one right at the back there. So I need to work out the jump off points. The Germans will have 3 standard jump off points. The British will have 2, and then they will also have to have their 3rd one, which will be back here in the original area, so therefore it's probably going to be in the farm area. So the jump off points, the first British jump off point is here in the farm area, the second just in front of these 2 buildings here, and the 3rd marked by the cavalry just here before the road. The Germans, we have 1 here just next to the watermill. We've got a 2nd just at the back of the trees here, and the 3rd we've got right on the board edge. So that's the game, and we're ready for the battle to commence.
So let's start with the main forces. We'll start with the British. We'll start with the ranking senior officer, who will really be the HQ at the back of the board essentially. We then have 2 senior leaders, so they'll be more fully engaged. Then in the main force we have 4 battalions. Each of the battalions will have a junior leader and 9 rifles. So for the British we have the 4th Middlesex Battalion. We then have the 1st Gordon Highlanders. We have the 2nd Royal Scots. And finally we have the 3rd Worcestershire Battalion. Now have a look at the support points. For the British we have 5, half of that of the Germans. And with that I brought a machine gun section for 2 points, the Royal Army Medical Corps for 2 points, and finally an upgrade for the Highlanders being aggressive fighters is an additional point. Some of the forces that we didn't use, we had some other options. We could have used the 15th Hussars, which would have been mounted infantry. We could have used the 5th Lancers as cavalry. We also could have used the 56th Royal Engineers, but I chose not to in the end and made the other options. Now, if we move to the Germans are a much larger force. So for the Germans, we have again the ranking senior officer at the back and 2 senior leaders. We have 6 battalions, each with a junior leader and 9 rifles. There's a number of battalions, the 55th, the 76th Infantry. We also have the 80th Fusilier Battalion, and we have our 3rd Jaeger Battalion. In terms of other elements to the main force, we have the machine gun team, and we also have the 3rd Hussars. In terms of support, we have the other 2 battalions I've downgraded to green, which gives us an extra 2 points. And in total, that means we've got 13, 5 of which we spend on the Grand Jaeger and Elite Force. We add a red dice, which we need for this large force, which is 3 points. And finally, we have the 16th Dragoon Cavalry, which is 5 points.
So we're ready to start. This is really, I always think, the best part of the game, the very first roll. And just wanted to say one thing, which is, I suppose, a common question when you're playing this as a solo game. Well, if you're on both sides, you know the plan. So the beauty of Chain of Command is that you can set out a plan, but does it really work out like that? So for the British here, along this particular road, what we want to do is essentially hold the Germans back. So therefore, it's to set up a defensive position to ensure that we don't have 2 units leaving the board at that end. So it might be that we have 3 battalions really with a line and then a defensive reserve here, and see how that goes. So that might be the best idea for the British. I think it's fairly sensible. For the Germans, well, we have to build up our forces. So by doing so, we have cavalry coming from the back here. We've also got this infantry line along here. And what we want to do is to do 2 things, which is to build up the force and indeed the chain of command dice. However, the challenge for the Germans really is to try and coordinate all of those things together. It's not quite as easy as that sounds. And remember, they want to try and make a dash, get off the board as quickly as possible with 2 units. That might be better by doing so before the British rather are particularly formed up and ready to defend. So we know what the idea is, we know the general plan. However, as far as the game is concerned, it never really rolls out like that. Now, this is the first phase. It's the British first because they have a better force morale of 11. So let's go. And straight away, it's a double phase for the British. We've got 1 for the chain of command dice, a 1 and a 2. Okay, with the 1, we bring in support units. So in this case, it's the Royal Army Medical Corps, brought in within 9 inches of the jump-off point. I've moved the trees out of the way just to see that it's there. So it's back in reserve for the British. And we also had a 2. But I'm not going to bring anything on the board there. So it is the British phase again, and this is a house rule. For the next phase, I'll have 4 dice. I always reduce it by 1 each time we have a repeat in terms of the roll. Okay, next British phase, and this time 2, 3, and a 4. Okay, I'm not doing anything with the 2 or the 3, but the 4 is the senior leader, and in actual fact it's the ranking senior leader. Both the British and the Germans have this, and they must be behind the jump-off point, which is closest to the board edge. And so this is where we've got the ranking senior leader here, based right at the back in terms of their HQ. Okay, so this is the Germans' first phase, and just talk through this for those who haven't seen the red dice before. So this is the support points that we used, and we ignore the 5 and 6, but it helps the Germans having such a large force, so we've got a 6th dice. Now, as it happens, it's going to be a double phase for the Germans with 2 6s. We ignore the 6 for this particular red dice, and we have a 1, a 2 and a 3. Now the 1 and the 3 are handy because not only do we have a double phase, but we've then been able to bring in number 1, which is the support unit, so that's the dragoons. Number 3 is the hussars, so straight away we're bringing up the cavalry. And then with the 2 we've brought in the 1st infantry battalion, so that's what we use, the 2-4, and the Germans are going to form up really along this line. Okay, as in the case with the British, I reduce 1 dice when we've got multiple phases, as the Germans again. And so that's 1 for the chain of command dice. We've got 2 4s, a 1 and a 3. Okay, so with this 4, the first senior officer we're going to bring in has to be the ranking officer, the same we did with the British, has to be behind the jump off point which is closest to the board edge, which is this one, just at the back here of these trees. So that's where that's going to set up here. I've then got a 3 and a 1, so I'm going to move these 2 units again in a moment, and I'm not going to use the other 4, which would have brought in another senior leader, so I'll just move these 2 cavalry units. Right, so normal movement is going to be 2d6 plus 1 further d6 for the cavalry. So first of all we've got the hussars, and there's a good move so they can go 12 inches, and then we've got the dragoons behind them, 12 inches and 9 inches respectively. Okay, British phase, and certainly that cavalry are beginning to make themselves a target. We'll have a look and see how we go. Lots of options. 3 4s, 2 3s. Now the British have 2 jump off points, 1 here and then 1 just over here. Now the challenge here is particularly when they're firing, there's a number of hedges, and we need to be quite far forward in order to be able to see past them. So if, for example, they set up here behind this line, you can see past this one, but only up to 6 inches, so realistically to there. So we could have the Germans approach all the way along this line without being seen. So it would be a challenge for the British to be able to get some suitable fire. I did mention a minute ago about the fact that the cavalry are moving up here, but again, they're really, the British are obscured and can't realistically see that target. The British, we had 3 4s and 2 3s, so the Middlesex regiment, the battalion, have moved out here and are going to try and occupy this area here as a good position to hold. So that's the only move I'm going to make for the British. No senior leaders, no other senior leaders are coming on the board. German phase, and another 1 to the chain of command dice takes the Germans on to 2, and then a bit like the British, we've got 3 senior leader and 2 junior leader orders. Right, I'm not going to bring any senior leaders on, but I'm just going to move this unit, so the hussars can move first of all, and secondly I'm going to just move this unit further forward as well. A bit of a probing exercise. Let's start with the hussars, and they go 7 inches, and actually I could go at the double with the other infantry, and the junior leader would just take the shock off, so I will do that. So I was going 7 with the cavalry, 9 inches with the infantry. British phase, 3 for the chain of command dice, taking us up to 4. one senior leader and one battalion which can't be activated by the junior leader. Okay, I'm not going to activate the senior leader as yet, so I'm going to move this battalion again, just a normal movement, so 2d6. Only 3 inches. German phase. And that's quite useful. So 2 1s, 2 2s and a 3. Right, well, just taking a step back from the board, you can certainly see the way that the Germans are moving here, which is very much on the left flank. And so with the 3, taking this junior leader, they've moved not very far across the road up to the wall. With this 1, this is a support unit. Now this is the elite that we have. It's the only elite battalion of the game, but this elite guard unit, this guard Jaeger unit, comes onto the board 9 inches from the jump off point. With the another 2, we have another Jaeger unit, so those 2 are here, but the one in the front there is the elite of the 2. With the other 2 from this jump off point, this battalion, the standard infantry battalion, has moved on and is now moving past this building. And finally, for the support dragoons, I need to roll for them, but they will move further forward. Now, with the Germans massing forward, 3 battalions on this left flank and 1 further on, we still have a further 2 to come on the board, which are what I have as the green battalions. But what we'll see now is the challenges it faces to actually move and manoeuvre all of these units together. However, this has been a good start for the Germans. The dragoons still need to move, 3 dice, and they move a total of 12 inches. The Germans have certainly showed their hand, so let's see how the British respond. So 2 more for the chain of command dice, which takes it up to a whole chain of command dice, and then we've got a 1, 2 and a 3. Right, I can't do much more than this, but with a 2, I brought on the Worcesters, so the Worcester Battalion is out there, as are the Scots. So we've already got this, that's with a 3, but I can't do a great deal more with it. And I've also brought in the machine gun section. So that's both of the supports out now for the British, and the only other unit I have waiting is the Highlanders in reserve. So I want to try and see if we can get these 2 battalions a little bit further forward. We're hampered by the fact there's a lot of hedgerows here, so we can't really fire too well. However, that said, the oncoming Germans will have to negotiate the fact that actually it's not that easy from here on in to advance and get at the British. So let's see how we go with the German phase. And the German phase. Oh, that's an excellent roll. So let's have a look. We've got 2 3s, 3 2s and a 1. Okay, so going across the board with 2, I'm going to move the elite Jaegers further forward. Then further along here we've got a 3. I'm going to move the Hussars up to towards the front line. With the 3 and the 1, I'm going to bring on a senior leader, and with the 2, I'm going to bring on yet another battalion, and then with this front battalion, I'm going to move those further forward. Now we can see that the Germans have started here on the left, but they are now amassing also on the right, so they've now advanced either side of the building. The infantry moving just there, just before the river, and now we've got the Hussars here, and behind them we've got the new green battalion, and in between those 2 infantry battalions we've also got a senior leader. So which way will they move? Let's see if the British can force their hand at all, and it's the British phase. Okay, 2 more for the chain of command dice, a 1, a 3 and a 4. Okay, so with a 4, we brought on the senior leader, the first senior leader, and he's ordered both of these 2 battalions forward. We haven't got quite over the hedge, but they've moved forward there. With the 1, I've brought up the ambulance, the Royal Army Medical Corps, and the first firing, because we've moved further forward with this battalion, and the junior leader is going to order the battalion to fire. It's the Middlesex regiment, for them to fire at half effect up here at the advancing infantry. So we're going to have just 4 dice and see how we go for the first firing. Right, 4 dice, needing 5s to hit, and 2 hits to start. Germans are in the open, so 3-4 will be a shock, 5 or 6 to kill. 1 kill and 1 shock. And is it the leader? We've got a junior leader in there and indeed a senior leader. Need a 1. No, it's not. Okay, it's German phase. 1 more to the chain of command dice, takes it to 3. And we've got 3 1s, a 2 and a 3. Okay, with the 1, I'm going to move the Jaeger battalion forward. Put together on the 1 and the 2, so I'm going to move these hussars further forward also. And finally, I'm going to put the 1 and the 3 together, so the senior leader can move these 2 battalions forward again and take off a point of shock. So we've had a good move there for the Jaegers, who are now moving across this road. We have the hussars, which have moved a long distance there and reformed up into a good position, supporting the advancing infantry. So it's the British phase. Just before we do the roll for the British, just want to see that you get an idea of the board. We've got the British here trying to set up a defensive line across this road, but then as we look across now towards the Germans, we can see that there is a concentration on the German right flank and being better supported now with the Jaegers moving across. So it would look like that it's an easier area to attack along this road, and at the moment it's not particularly well defended. British phase. Another 5 for the chain of command dice, which takes them up to 3 on the second dice, and then we have 2 3s and a 1. Okay, we've had the 1 and 3 together so that I can get the senior leader engaged, and he has and have moved both of these 2 battalions further forward, and with the other 3 I've moved this battalion slightly further forward, and it's going to fire at the infantry that are advancing. Okay, I've got 9 dice needing 5s, and that's 2 hits, 3 hits. They're in the open, so 3-4 is a shock. So I've got 1 shock and 1 kill. And the test is it the leader? Oh yes, it is. So is it the senior leader or the junior leader? 1 2 3 is the junior. No, it's a senior leader. And what happens to the senior leader? He loses 1 command initiative, but also that's a bad thing, so let's check that. 2, so let's have a check. That might well be a -1. And yes, that's a -1, so the Germans are down to 8 on morale, and the senior leader is down to 2 in terms of command initiatives, which is going to be a big problem for such a large force. German phase. And it's a waste for the red dice. We ignore the 5, so instead we've just got a 1, 2 3s and a 4. Right, this game really is moving apace now. With the 1, we've moved the elite Jaeger further forward, moved it across, so it's now a threat to these 2 battalions. With the 3, I've moved the hussars forward, so we've got a mix really. It threatens both the Scots here and the Middlesex battalion, so we'll see what we do for the British. And then with the 4, the senior leader, just hiding behind this tree here, with its 2 commands, has ordered both of these 2 battalions forward at the double, and they were both good rolls, so although they've taken a bit of shock, they're also now a major threat to this battalion. So let's see how the British respond. Okay, you need a good roll here. And that's probably it. 4 threes and a 2. Certainly don't think we could have had a better roll for the British. So we have, with the first 3, the junior leader has ordered this battalion to move, so it's moved further forward, and it will now fire here on the Jaeger battalion. We have another 3 here, so this has moved slightly and will fire onto the cavalry. The Middlesex will fire onto this infantry battalion using its 5 rounds rapid. It hasn't moved, and that's 2 commands from the junior leader, as will be the same case for our reserve. The Highlanders have appeared and will do the same, but this time they're going to fire onto the cavalry. We're starting with 9 dice here at the Jaegers, but they are elite, so it's still 5s and 6s to hit. So let's see how we go on. Okay, so it looks like we've got just 3 hits. Light cover, so 4-5 is a shock, 6 to kill. Point of shock, and there is 1 kill. No, it's not. Okay, this time we're firing the cavalry. So in the open. So sorry, that doesn't matter. It's got to be just start off 4, 5s and 6s. That's what I'm trying to work out. Right. So 1, 2, 3 hits. Okay. So 3, 4 is shock. 5, 6 is a wound. 1 point of shock and 1 kill. Now we want to see whether that might be whether it's hit the horse as opposed to the rider. No, it's the rider. So the rider is killed, and we've got 1 point of shock. But we want to see, is it the junior leader? No, it's not. Now we've got the Highlanders firing at the cavalry. It's a close firing, so it's 4, 5 and 6s, but then we also add 2 dice because our junior leader is adding 5 rounds rapid into the mix, so we've got 11 dice to hit. Okay, 11 dice needing 4, 5s and 6s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits. 3, 4 shock. 5, 6 to kill. So we've got 1 point of shock and 2 kills. 2 kills, if we roll a 1 we ignore it because it's hit the horse, and 1 has. So what's happened here is that 1's hit the horse and he ignores it. The 2nd has hit the horse, and the horse is... The upshot of that is that because it's cavalry and not mounted infantry, we've got the cavalry, it is dismounted, but unfortunately only mounted infantry would then fight on foot, so we do remove the figure. Let's test whether it's the junior leader who's hit. No, it's not. We've got 2 points of shock at the end there, and 3 figures remaining, so everything continues. It isn't the junior leader hit, so yeah, we just carry on. And finally, we've got the Middlesex battalion firing at close range. Going to give light cover to the infantry because it's obscured, but also I'm going to add 2 dice for the 5 rounds rapid. So we've got 11 dice. 11 dice needing 4, 5s and 6s. Gives us 4 hits. So 4, 5 is going to be shock. 6 to kill. That's 1 point of shock and 1 kill. Is it the leader? No, it's not. And now it's the German phase. Okay, so we ignore the 6 and from the red dice. 5 gives us a chain of command dice. It takes us up to 4, which means it leaves 2 3s and a 4. Okay, with the 3, I'm going to move this cavalry into combat with the infantry there. I'm going to use the 3 here for the junior leader. I'm going to take a point of shock off that infantry and move them up, see how far forward they go. It means I'll roll 2d6 and take off the lower, because it's got a wall in front of it and it's going to be difficult to move through, see whether it gets within 4 inches into contact. And then with the 4, the senior leader with the 2 commands is going to order this unit forward again and take off a point of shock. Okay, well, the cavalry's moved into attack, and in addition to that, the infantry moved close enough so once that fight is finished here, the infantry are going to go in also. Right, you can see with the 3 I've moved the cavalry into action. So I'm just going to talk through the dice that you get in the hand-to-hand combat. Did that in a previous video and people liked it, so I'll just talk it through. So let's look at the Germans first. So the Germans, I'm using all 3 figures. So normally in combat you don't use the officers. However, because we're using a whole battalion here, I am going to use the officers in each case. So it's not like we're using it in a platoon. So as a consequence, we've got 3 figures. So we've got 1, 2, 3. I'm going to say that the standard between the 2 are the same, so there's no difference in a value there. You get 2 points for the command initiative, so we've got 2 for that junior leader, and for cavalry into attack here, they count as aggressive fighters. Mounted infantry don't, but cavalry do, so that gives the Germans 6 in total, so that's the aggressive fighters there. The British, well, the British would have all 10 for the infantry there, and also would have 2 for the command initiative. However, the one advantage for the cavalry is that when they go into attack, it's as if the infantry are being hit in the rear, and therefore we remove half the dice, and the British and the Germans will both have 6. Throw the whole thing into the same pot. So 5s and 6s cause a kill, 6 is an additional point of shock. Now, that would seem that the Germans have won that. Now, one thing I've just realised is that the Germans also had 2 points of shock, so actually we should have just rolled 5 dice rather than 6. So, as we've got 2 kills out of 6, I'm going to have to roll and see whether one of them, I should have had something else, so it's slightly complicated. So if I roll, I'm going to say if I roll a 1 or a 2, it's only 1 kill rather than 2. No, it's not. So it's 2 kills. Right, before we work out the consequence of that, so we've got 2 kills, none with the Germans, and so with the 2 kills, is one of them the junior leader? No, it's not. Right, so the British are thrown back 9 inches by losing by 2. They take a point of shock, and as a consequence, I'm going to say they're now too far away for the infantry. That's going to be the end of that German phase. Just a quick look at the table once again, and just looking now that the British have been pushed back a little bit on their left flank as the Germans start to press on the right hand side. 2 more British battalions holding a line here, and moving further up, we've got the Germans advancing. Now, one thing just to mention is that there are still 2 German battalions which haven't come onto the board, and we've also got in reserve here these dragoons. So I could bring them on, but the problem is if I did, we've got another, also there's a machine gun and a senior leader still to come on the board. Is to try and combine this is going to be a little bit tricky. Also, the Germans are down to 8 on their force morale, and we'll have to see whether that comes into play soon. So anyway, back to the British, and let's see how they go on in their phase. Okay, so we've got 2 2s, a 1 and a 4. Okay, with the 2 2s, this senior leader here is going to order the Scots to move up, so that's 1 order, and is going to use 2 command initiatives for the Worcesters to fire with 5 rounds rapid at the Jaegers. Moving on the other side here with the 1, we're going to move this support team, the machine gun team, moving into this direction. It can't fire, but it's just going to move. And with the 4 brought in, the final senior leader for the British is going to order the Scots here, to the Highlanders, to fire, and then for the Middlesex to fire also and take off a point of shock. Okay, the Worcester's firing at the Jaegers, needing 5s, and that's pretty good shooting, so that's 5 hits. 4 and 5 is shock, 6 to kill. 1 kill, 1 shock. Is it the leader? No, it's not. Okay, it's only 2 inches move forward with the Scots there. It's a pretty poor move. This machine gun team has now moved and is pointing down the road. We can't fire. Highlanders firing at the cavalry. 4 5s and 6s needed. 1 2 3 4 hits and 2 kills. Let's test whether it's the horses. One of the horses is, so it's just 1 kill from the Scots. Is it the junior leader? No, it's not. 7 rifles, again firing at the cavalry, and we've got 3 hits and 2 kills. So let's have a look at these horses again. 1 is the horse, but again, although he will be dismounted, we have to remove the figure, so it's essentially 2 kills. Is it the junior leader? No, it's not, but essentially the section is going to be removed. Essentially what we've lost there is we have 2 bad things to test for, which is going to be a section lost, but also a junior leader routed. Okay, so let's do section lost first of all. 5, I think that might be a -2. Junior leader routing a 5, that might be a -2 as well. Right, it certainly is. It's a -2 for both, and the Germans are down to 4. I've played that really poorly actually with the cavalry. I should have used the cavalry very much in reserve to try and get them across the line, but now this game looks very, very challenging for the Germans. Okay, I think if the Germans have any chance at all, I think we need to move again on the Germans' left flank. So let's see how we go. Double phase would be good. That's not what we've got though. We've got 1 more on the chain of command dice, taking it to 5. But the rest of it could be good. So 2 1s, a 2, a 3 and a 4. Okay, a bit of a last throw of the dice here for the Germans, otherwise they're going to have to haul up some artillery to get these British shifted. Right, with the 2 I brought on a new battalion. With the 4 we brought in the final senior leader. We've then got, he's going to order these 2 battalions forward. With the 1, the Jaeger are going to do exactly the same thing and move forward as well. And then with the 1 and the 3, this senior leader has moved, and so with his 1 final command is going to get this battalion to move further forward again. British phase, and oh, that's not particularly good. So 2 5s takes us up to 4 on the second chain of command dice. 6 means the Germans phase, but 2 1s means that we've only got a 2. Well, all we can do here is for the this battalion to fire at the Jaegers. They're pretty near, and it's the immediate targets. They're elite, so it's still a 5s and 6s. Oh dear, that's very disappointing. So that's just 1 hit and no effect. So advantage to the Germans. Okay, looking at it from a distance, it's coming into the German phase here, and this is how I see the game. We've got 4 German battalions on the left flank here. So I think the only way the Germans can win, after I moved the cavalry forward, which was a terrible move really, is to try and make sure that 2 of these 4 are able to force their way past the British on the what is the British right flank, and then move further down here to get off the board at this end. For the British, I still think it's a fairly solid position. They've been able to, if they can hold off on this line, it's still pretty tricky to actually move through this area, so it's going to take some time for the Germans. We have the Scots here to can come in and reinforce. There's also a machine gun which again can turn round. We've got two battalions on this side, and they're fairly held because we've got some Germans on the German right flank. But at the moment, I think, again, because the Germans are down to 4 on their force morale, we're in a very tricky situation, so advantage certainly to the British at the moment, but it's the German phase. Okay, let's see how things roll. And that's a waste really, with the 6 on the red dice and another 6. That leaves us with 3 2s and a 1. However, that should be good enough to move these battalions on the left flank. Okay, well, rather than put the 2s together to make a senior leader, he's not near enough to all 3 of the battalions, and therefore I'm going to use each of the 2s to move the 3 battalions further forward, and the 1 is going to be used with the Jaeger to attack the British here, remembering the fact that in terms of the reason why we use a 1 is because it's a support unit. Okay, so we've got hand-to-hand fighting with the Worcesters and this elite Jaeger unit. So I'm just going to talk through the dice again, just like I did with the cavalry engagement. So we've got 10 dice. So this is 10 for all of the figures for the British. I include the junior leader within the figure. I don't with the senior leader in a second, so I'll just talk that through. So that's 10 dice to start off with. We then have our leadership. So we've got 2 for the junior leader and 3 because we also have a senior leader, so that's 5 in total. We get 1 because the Jaegers moved by 1, and then we're also in light cover. So in total we've got 16 dice, and you get a dice for every 3, so we get an additional 5. So in total for the British we've got 21 dice. We just move over across to the Germans. Now the Germans have 8 dice, that's we've got 8 figures, and we have a junior leader which takes us to 10. So therefore, although it's there on the attack and the offensive, certainly the British have a huge advantage. So we're looking at 5s and 6s. If we roll a 6, then that's an additional point of shot. With the green dice for the British, looking for 5s and 6s. So that's 3 kills. Now the blue dice for the remainder. So in total, we've got 5 kills, 4 of which will be additional shock. Now the Germans. And it's just the same. The Germans get 5 also, but it's just 2 points of shock rather than 4. Right, so we have a bad thing with the junior leader killed for the Germans. Now that's a 4. We'll look at that in 1 second. And for the British, the junior leader taking a wound is a 2. I'll have a look at that in a second also. Right, with the junior leader being killed, it's actually a -2 for the Germans, and the Germans are down to 2. And with a 2 for the British, it's actually no effect, so the British remain on 11 for force morale. Because the forces actually were equal, we will also fight again. Now the Germans have a shock of 4 as well, so they are pinned in the as we go back into battle. Actually, just totting up the score here, the British would have 6 figures. So we'd have 6, we've got a junior leader which takes us to 8, we've also got a senior leader which takes us to 11. The Germans only have 3, but they're pinned, so they would actually half their numbers, have to take the points off for shock, etc. The end of this is that actually they would rout. So with that unit routing, it's another bad thing, and therefore we'll just roll that, and I think we can call the game. Okay, so we're actually at support unit routes. So we roll for that. With a 1, it's a -1 to morale. The Germans are down to 1, and I think that's the game. Well, remarkably, that's it. The British have held the line, I should say. The Germans haven't been able to move past this at all. The major reason for that is that I lost a lot of the force morale with the cavalry coming down here, which was just daft. But I guess that's not going to be the first, or it wasn't the first or last impetuous cavalry charge in military history. So unfortunately, that's really cost the Germans dearly. Now, I've tried to do this to show how chain of command can be adapted really into this period. I think it works pretty well, and it's a really good idea and a really good thing to get different figures on the board and try and do it in a different way. But the whole idea of trying to get this game out is to see what your thoughts are. People have been very kind with the what they thought about the adaptation of the rules, and I really would appreciate your thoughts and feedback on how we might improve it and what we might do moving forward. Finally, I'd just like to thank Richard of Two Fat Lardies for giving this a thumbs up and endorsing it and let us to run the game. I really appreciate that. And all of the thoughts from the new Facebook group, Chain of Command First World War, and how we've moved that further forward and the ideas that we've got from that. So that's it, really. Thanks to everybody who's watched. Please, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not already a subscriber to Wargaming World, just click the button, get subscribed, and help us grow this channel so we can put new ideas, thoughts, games every week out there. And thanks once again.